like we have a quorum, so we'll go ahead and get started with tonight's called meeting to discuss the FY25 budget and the proposed millage rate. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and move on down to item number 2, roll call. Superintendent Hooker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Heidi Hensley.
Here.
Ms. Claudia Butts. Ms. Linda Davis.
Here.
Dr. Patricia Yeager.
Here.
Mr. Tim Denson. Dr. Mombi Anderson.
Here.
Dr. Lakeisha Gant. Ms. Nicole Hull. Mr. Mark Evans.
Here.
All right, it looks like we have a quorum. We will move on to item number 3 to adopt the agenda as presented.
I move we adopt the agenda. Second.
All right, motion made by Ms. Hensley and seconded by Dr. Yeager. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. We will now move on to item number 4, the FY25 budget presentation. Mr. Greiner.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Want to go through the updated budget presentation. Just made some changes based on our last hearing, which was last Tuesday. So just gonna kind of, but I'll kind of scroll through the whole presentation, and again, we'll talk about the items that we added since the last budget hearing. Yeah, I got it. So the agenda is just a budget update, as I mentioned, from our May 9th meeting when the tentative budget was approved, and then our June 3rd and 4th budget hearings, so both of those. Strategic plan, I won't go through each one of those items again. So the update from the tentative budget presentation was we did receive an updated QBE amount for our transportation allotment, so it's a little over 1.1 million. We did receive a little bit more of the safety grant increase. We're actually receiving a little over $47,000 per school for that next year. We did get clarification from the Department of Education that we can use that for personnel-related costs, any safety, security items. So we're going to actually receive that total grant on a monthly basis. They'll take the total amount, divide by 12. So they made that process a lot more streamlined for this. I think our hope is that going forward we'll receive that every year. I think that's one of the governor's initiatives. Right now, the classified salary increase, originally we had it at $1,250. We moved that up to $1,750, and we'll discuss that in more detail later, where we're at on that. We did add the 2 paraprofessionals per elementary school. We'll also discuss that a little bit more in detail. 2 mental health counselors at the high school level, so that would be 1 at Cedar Shoals and 1 at Clark Central. Beginning fund balance does reflect an increase. We feel like we're going to at least have $1.2 million over where we started the year in FY24. So state budget changes, these are changes from the governor's office and that passed through legislation for next year's budget. Salary increase for all certified personnel of $2,500. We talked about the increase in the pupil transportation allotment as well as the school security grant. Certified health insurance, we've talked about that going up, which is not the employee portion, but the employer portion. Same with classified health insurance, that's going up January 1st. The increase in the employer match for TRS from 19.98% to 20.78%. Again, keeping in mind the employee's contribution stays the same at 6%. FY25 revenues projected. Property tax, we're anticipating a growth of 9.63%. Last year, keep in mind that was for FY24 about a 17% increase. So 9.63% is about what we've seen if you look at a 5-year history on our tax digest. That's more in line. FY24 was one of those years where property values definitely skyrocketed across the state, including Clark County. We anticipate a 1% delinquency, so 99% collection rate by our tax commissioner, which is in line with most other districts that I've been at. Athens Clark County does charge us 2.5% to collect our taxes, and then they transmit that to us on a weekly basis. So we estimate about $650,000 for any delinquent payments from prior tax digest. The millage rate is tentatively set to stay the same as last year at 18.8 mils, which would bring in an estimated amount of about 135 million. So again, this is just kind of a recap of what the net digest has looked like per mill. You can see we're at about 7.4 million per mill for FY25. Keep it in mind when it says 2024, that's the 2024 tax digest. Millage rate was lowered back in 2023, and we propose, again, tentatively set to stay the same at 18.8 mils. QBE was about a 1.02% increase over last year. Again, we've already talked through most of these pieces, the TRS increase, the health insurance increase. Our estimated QBE is around 86.8 million. So again, here's just a recap of our QBE earnings. Total estimated revenues of almost a little over 235 million, so about a $21 million increase over last year. For our FY25 expenditures, again, these are state mandated changes we've already talked through. The only one I didn't mention was the governor is funding a salary supplement of $1,000 for our custodians, and that'll be money we'll receive directly from the state for our custodians. So that'll be a one-time payment. We're not sure when in FY25. It's normally October, November, December, kind of in that time frame, but the state lets us know ahead of time, and then we receive the funding for that. So looking at the CCSD initiatives, again, right now we have in the budget the salary increase at $17.50 for classified employees. We have a continuation of the 403B match for all our employees who are not in TRS. This match is up to 6%, the same as in FY24. So it's dollar for dollar up to 6%. Step increase for all eligible employees. These are new positions we added. I won't go through each one of those. Some of those are around the CCSD Learning Center, and it's moved to the CCSD Student Support Center, formerly Rutland. We do have some additional security positions, maintenance positions, which we talked about much earlier in this year. It has the 28 parapro positions as well as the 2 mental health counselors. These are the ARPA positions that we are recommending be continued in the general fund. Some of that is due to FTE growth at our schools. That's the 12.5 positions. The other 9 are all district level ARPA positions that we're recommending move over to the general fund budget. All of these are directly related to working with our students in one way or another. Our expenditure comparison, we're projecting expenditures to be $240.6 million, or a $26.5 million increase, or 12.38%. Breaking that 12.38% down, looking at the state mandated increases, I include classified salary increase because we feel like if the governor is proposing a certified salary increase, we definitely need to propose one for our classified employees as well. So that makes up 5.64% of the 12% increase. Changes or initiatives we have put forth equal the other 6.74%. Most of those are all salary benefit related. Salary and benefits account for about 86% of our budget, which is pretty much standard across the state of Georgia for other school districts. Salary benefit difference is explained, the $21 million. This is kind of a look at our salary increases going all the way back to FY22. Our custodians received a $1,000 one-time supplement in FY24, and again, they'll receive one in FY25. The governor gave a $2,000 raise in FY24. We matched that to bump that up to $4,000 for certified and classified. In FY22, there wasn't an adjustment to the salary table. There was actually it was a $2,000 total supplement that was paid out in $1,000 increments twice that year. So this is our operating expenditure difference, change of about $5.3 million. A lot of these items are items that we've been paying for through ARPA funds that we feel like need to be continued and moved over to the general fund. We do have a $2 million transfer in there for deferred maintenance. I think Dr. Askew and his team have spoke on that throughout the year, that we have areas that we need to work on at different schools. So that's what that $2 million would be put in a separate fund and then it'd be accounted for that way. So with all those items, projected beginning fund balance of about 55 million. With the estimated revenues, estimated expenditures, we would use about 5.5 million of fund balance. So that would leave us 49.4 million in fund balance, or 20.55%. So items for consideration. So these are items that have been mentioned at the budget hearings. It's been proposed to potentially look at a $250 supply stipend for our teachers. The estimated cost of that would be $337,500. To increase the classified salary increase from the $1,750 to $2,500. The other proposal that we mentioned was potentially doing the $1,750, but then a one-time supplement of $750. Either way, the total cost under both those scenarios is $900,000. We did have a meeting with our district leadership today, which includes our principals. We polled our elementary school principals. They really feel like they would be fine with the one additional parapro over the two. So we've proposed reducing that amount just based on their feedback today. So that would be a reduction of what's been added in the budget of about $588,000. And then our middle schools really would like to see a mental health counselor added at each middle school to go along with the two we're adding at the high school level. So the estimated cost of that would be $394,000. So this is, again, based on feedback. I will also say on the $250 supply stipend, our schools, we ask all the principals, they feel like they have adequate funding for supplies, and that if that's an item that we don't feel, they feel like we could definitely remove that if needed. So that is included in this number. So I updated this number, so if we take all that into consideration, let me get back. Supply stipend, the increase in salary, reducing the parapros down from 2 to 1, and then adding the mental health counselors at each middle school, we would be looking at taking about a little over 6.5 million out of fund balance. Would still leave us in the 20, again, I think, let me get back to this. I think I did, yeah, I increased fund balance with the 1.2 million, so it's 55.5 million. And then that would leave us about 20.24% in our ending fund balance of roughly about 49 million. And that's the slides I have. I'll be glad to answer any questions y'all might have. The purpose really tonight is to kind of take the items for consideration, kind of work through those, and then see what the budget would actually be voted. The tentative budget would then become the final budget that would be voted on for adoption tomorrow night. So that's kind of what we need as a district staff, is just feedback on how to move forward with the budget for tomorrow night that we present for adoption. So.
Thank you, Mr. Greiner.
Thank you.
All right, we will open up the floor for questions or comments or concerns. Anyone? Mr. Denson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question is going to be on the communications that we got earlier today from Dr. Hooker about polling the elementary school principals. There was a line about the added benefit of offsetting the cost by not hiring a second additional paraprofessionals. What would be those additional costs that would be offset by not having two instead of one that were referred there?
Maybe I could have used better terminology instead of offsetting, but in speaking with principals, a lot of them, many of them said we can deal with one. Some of them still have difficulty in hiring a parapro. Also, the middle school spoke up and saying, everyone is getting something except us. We would love to have a mental health counselor at our schools. So my apology for using offsetting. Next time I'll let Cindy edit it better next time. I'll stop trying to write my own and let the PR person assist me in writing that. But listening to our leaders, they were looking from the overall perspective, how can all of this be a win-win? And when we think about parapros, we already have a ranked system in which we use in hiring personnel, and I'll allow Mr. Growner to speak to that. Many of our staffs have additional parapros, additional teachers to lower not only class sizes, but to assist in that comparison to other school districts when it comes to that. We outnumber them in the number of personnel that we have in our buildings. But I'll allow you at this point to talk about the ranking
Sure,
system
sure.
that we use.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hooker. Yeah, every school district has what's called a resource allocation methodology plan, and that's what we develop. It basically looks at what do we earn through QBE. Right now, we're probably funding 60 teachers over what we earn from QBE. That's something that, y'all made a decision many years ago to have lower class sizes, which I applaud y'all for doing that. So we're able to have much lower class sizes than what's recommended by QBE. So therefore, we are funding those additional. We also do look at schools that have higher poverty ratios, just other different, maybe a special program a school has, and that's how we fund the personnel at those schools. So.
And if I can just have a follow-up, and I know this was brought up at last week's hearing also, that, some schools having more trouble filling the paraprofessional positions that are allocated to them, just because it's a little bit harder to hire at those schools. And understand if this isn't already been done, this is too late for us to put in here, but I'd like to consider it maybe next year. Do we have, again, to address that inequity? Because what I'd rather do than taking positions away from other schools, saying everybody's going to be at the lower threshold, find ways for us to fill those vacancies, not for everyone. Have we looked into doing hiring bonuses for those schools that have historically shown more difficulty in luring candidates to their schools?
That's something we can discuss on next year. We did not take that into account this year.
Okay, yeah, and I agree. This is late to bring that up, but that's something I would love for us to maybe look into if those schools are having that difficulty, rather than, again, saying that the schools who are able to hire taking away positions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Right, I have seen that done. I'm not sure if we've done that here, but I know at other districts I've been in, we did that with special education teachers trying to do I know a lot of districts have tried to get creative with that, Mr. Denson, and trying to do like a hire on bonus, it's harder to fill positions, trying to work through that. Some of that was through ARPA funding, was able to supply that funding for that as well. So.
And pardon me, Mr. Griner, but we currently do that with certain special ed parapros positions. They do get additional bonuses, as well as bus drivers who are riding with our most severe special needs students. They also receive bonuses as well for doing that work.
Okay, other questions? Yes, Dr. Yeager?
I guess just following up on that, every single principal in the elementary school said they only wanted one parapro, or was a majority of the principals saying they only needed one parapro? Because if there's any school out there that needs two, why are we not giving them two?
A majority of the principals that were there said one. There were a few who said two, and a couple of those schools still have openings even before we have adding these two additional positions. They have not filled the ones that they have now.
It just seems like this isn't really working. It's the number one comment I get from parents and teachers saying, more parapros, please. That's like the number one comment I get about hiring, or, other than pay teachers more, which is already obvious.
Okay.
All right, are there other comments, questions?
I'm sorry, I want to go back to that $1,000 that we're getting for the custodians, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that already factored into the 17? So that's in addition to, so they'll be getting 27.
Right, and if we go with the $2,500 item for consideration, they would be receiving. Technically, they would get $2,500 on the salary table, which would continue forward to future years, sorry. And then they would also get that $1,000 as a one-time, almost like I hate to say the word bonus, it's a supplement is the way the governor describes it. But, yeah.
So that, it's over and above whatever we decide to do to match the states.
And then that's a year to year. The governor, the last 2 years has provided that $1,000. So I think it's always hard to say if that would continue in the future, but the if the $2,500 is decided, or the $1,750, those would be permanent moving forward, so.
So if we got the $1,000 for the custodians, how many other classified people will that leave without that $1,000?
Roughly, we have and I'm doing this off the top of my head, about 850 to 870 classified employees. Our custodians probably make up about 140 to 150 of that, so you're about 700, roughly 720, somewhere around there.
Okay. Thank you. I didn't remember that from last year, but thanks again.
Yes, ma'am.
This is good.
I'm trying to remember if he included it in the original budget. I think he did last year, but sometimes he'll add it on after, but I think it was in the original budget last year. Sometimes the governor does it after the budget and has done stuff like that mid-year, so.
So you think we'll get $1,000 mid-year for the custodians too?
Nah, well, last year he did a retention bonus for all employees. That was that surprise we got in December
Yeah.
last year. So
I remember that one.
I will say state revenues are down a little bit now, so I'm not sure that's going to continue. And they did, they used reserves this year for different projects and to continue to, different initiatives. So that's never a guarantee. So I think last year we were all kind of surprised by that.
So do we know where they are on spending their ARPA funds?
The state?
Yeah.
I do not.
Okay. That increases our likelihood. Thanks.
That is true.
Okay. Are there any other questions from members? Okay. I'll just say a couple of things, if that's okay. Oh, all right, go ahead.
You can go
Mr.
first. I didn't
Benson.
want to speak again until everybody else had spoken, so if you want to go, then I can go.
No, you're, absolutely. Go ahead, and then
Okay, okay.
I like to go last.
All right, yeah.
Just for respect for you all as board members.
Okay. Just to comment on the other things that are coming up here, I do, so that we can get closer to having something finalized that we can actually vote on tomorrow night. I just want to go ahead and speak my support for doing the classified salary increase as something permanent instead of just the one time, especially with us having a slight increase in the revenue coming in. And I definitely support the mental health counselors for the middle schools and everything else that's on here. I guess I would like to say I would like to keep the 2 parapros in place, at least for the schools that want to take advantage of it. I mean, I don't want to force it upon any principal that doesn't want that extra position, but at least keeping it available to the ones that do feel like it would be an asset for their school. And by doing that, my very rough calculations looking here, it looks like it would still keep us at about 20% of our operating within our fund balance. So that's kind of where I stand.
Can I add one thing, Dr. Anderson? Is that
Yes.
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
I will say there's a couple thoughts came about. When we were talking to our elementary school principals, Mr. Didson, I think they would definitely prefer, the positions over the supply stipend that we mentioned. So that may be, that's something, those two, would kind of counterbalance each other as well. Something to consider. One thing I didn't mention either when I did the budget, I'm sorry. I know Dr. Gant's not here this evening, but she's mentioned the media centers, I think, in both budget hearings. We do year-end closed meetings with all our schools. So I've had the opportunity to speak to all principals this week, Monday and Tuesday. So I asked them, do they have any media center needs? We had one school that said, yes, they could probably use a little bit more funding. We have 2 that need furniture, but we provide a furniture allotment. And I said, if you need additional furniture, we can work that out. The rest of them said they all feel like they're adequately funded. Like a lot of times they don't feel like their media specialists lack for anything. I will say some schools use their LSGT money. I know that's a thought we kicked around. I do think there is an avenue to use LSGT funds for media center refreshes. Some schools use book fair money. Some have done book vending machines through their LSGT money. I was kind of impressed with the creativity a lot of our schools use in their media centers. So I just wanted to follow. Again, I know Dr. Gant's not here this evening, but wanted to follow up on her comments from the last couple of meetings and just say we have spoken to all the different schools just to kind of get a pulse of what they were seeing as needs with their media center. So.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Greiner. Yes, Ms. Hensley.
I just kind of want to piggyback on the parapro issue. I 100% agree with you Dr. Yeager, that is a critical piece. And I know we talked about equity and whatever, but I am concerned, and I like what you said, Tim, about looking at this in the future on schools that traditionally don't fill those positions. My concern is if we open that up to every school and we keep that on, that there are 2 parapros, you're going to have those certain schools positions filled where others may not be. And that really concerns me. Whereas, and I don't know if we can do that. Like, I don't know if we can put people places that we want to put them or how that works. But that is my concern. If we open that up to every school right now without an incentive, especially for the schools that can't even get the one that they need, that we're going to overstack those same certain schools that get overstacked, and some of these others that have a harder time filling those positions, people are going to want those jobs as opposed to the ones that may be the ones that need it the most. And I don't know, again, I don't know enough about personnel as to whether or not we can filter people where they need to be. I think parapros are incredibly important and critical to every school, and I wish we could see more bodies. We're already having a hard time filling even some teachers' positions right now, like what we can do in the future to make those jobs more enticing. I just do worry if we open it up right now, you're going to have some schools that have less than others. That's just 2 cents.
Okay. All right, Mr. Evans.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to say that the 250 for me, that's got to be there. I used to be that guy who'd have to spend his money
Gotcha.
because we just didn't have it. Come November, December, you're like, well. And so if there's a way for us that we can help them build up a reserve so that way they've got things that they need, I think that's there. The 2,500, I agree with Mr. Jensen, that needs to be a permanent thing. As I look at the landscape of education, I can tell you now that our graduation rates for teachers is low. And we're one of the ones that have lots of kids still, but it's still low. And those classified personnel are the ones that make the school the school. And so for us to, keep them, we need to pay them. They need to be able to earn a living wage. And so that's why, I'm really not going to ask, going to kind of demand on this one that we keep it at 2,500 and we make that a permanent thing, which I understand is something that we can do. I agree with my colleagues. I've always believed more hands are better than less. But, we also need to listen to our building leaders. And, if they're telling us that, I just have a hard time processing that in my mind as I go through Northeast Georgia to different schools and things. That they're telling us that they don't need them. But, again, we need to trust our people, right? So that's what we'll do. And mental health counselors, I, of course, being the idealistic dreamer, have said, well, why can't we have it all, But I also understand that it is pie, and there's only so many bites that we can take out of it. So, yeah. So the hill I'm going to die on is 2,500, okay?
Good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Others? Ms. Davis?
And it's okay if this is not an appropriate conversation for this particular discussion, but I do want to get some information on the number of mental health counselors that we have, and, how do we measure their effectiveness, and what do we do with their caseload? Do we have a criteria there? Because it seems kind of odd that just kind of pops up as we need to at each one, and does that, what drives that need, or is it simply something that's missing entirely right now? Because it's serious. That's not a plaything as we look at the challenges that we're dealing with the discipline problems that we're having in our schools. Right. So.
Can I respond?
Yes, Dr. Hooker.
Thank you, Ms. Davis, for bringing that up. And I can share with you, and speaking with our principals and even with our counselors, The mental health counselors have been a tremendous asset in having them in our buildings. For as data is concerned, we can get you data from both high schools as well as middle schools that have had them in place this year, and they constantly tell you we're having more and more students since the pandemic who are visiting and asking for help. And we're partnering with others to provide resources for parents or direct them in paths to get counseling or other services. They're greatly needed. I think in some cases, Officer Reed is not here, but there's a program where we have on the computers, if certain words are given, that we're able to alert our counselors that, hey, this kid has written that, we need to intercede or intervene to assist those kids. Numbers have gone up, especially at the high school level with kids needing some resources. And Dr. Scott, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but you probably can speak to it more, being that you oversee that department.
Not a problem. Good afternoon or evening. So when it comes to that, then it's definitely a resource that we see is in need right now. We've been able to provide mental health services through a variety of different avenues using ESSER funds, and so some of that is no longer available. Our middle schools had the mental health counselors through the ESSER funds, and so with that, then our building leaders were able to really focus their counselors who were already there around some other aspects for whole school support and SEL support, and then the mental health counselors were able to take caseloads based upon either parent requests, student requests. Of course, it then would go towards parent permission, and then as Dr. Hooker mentioned, through Go Guardian, we are able to get information regarding things that students are looking at online that trigger the need to possibly intervene and get parents involved, and then offering that as a support to parents, because we know that our APEX services right now in the county are not always readily taking new patients or new clients on, but then whenever we're able to provide some level of support while they're waiting to get those appointments for students, then that's always helpful as well. But we can definitely pull the specific data to be able to say what the caseloads look like across the district through all the various platforms that were being used.
Thank you, that would be really great. Okay, can I have one more follow-up?
Yes, Ms. Davis.
You mentioned ESSER funding for some of the mental health specialists that we have now. They're clinical, right? Not
It was a
lab?
variety.
Okay. That
Some of
matters
them
also.
were definitely clinical.
Okay, and then the next question is, and this came from someone, I got an email today about there seemed to be an allocation, and I'm quoting these numbers from memory, which is very poor on my part, so I probably shouldn't spit a number out here, but it looked like maybe 30% of the ESSER funds were already allocated or used or received from the allocation that ends this year, right, for 24. Is this one of those situations where you have to spend the money and then get reimbursed from that? So while it looks like there's $7 million out there that is not being spent, is it allocated, is the question.
Yeah, I can answer that. Yes, Ms. Davis. It's there's actually about 11 million that we're still have that's not spent at this current time. Some of that's going to our summer school program that's currently in process. We still have salary and benefits that are carrying over and will carry over to the end of August. Some September for the district level positions. There's an indirect cost factor that's built into the budget for FY24 for the general fund, which is basically the administrative costs we're allowed to charge back, for managing the grant. We met, Dr. Elder and I met at the end, roughly toward the end of May. We plan to meet again at the end of June, and then we'll continue to have monthly meetings to ensure that we do, our goal, Dr. Hooker's goal is to spend 100% of that. We have till September 30th. They actually have a small extension to the end of December, but our goal was by September 30th, we'll have that fully spent. So.
Thank you.
Yes, That's me.
And thank y'all for that discussion. I didn't write that down, so good.
Yes, Ms. Hensley.
I just have one other question for you about the 2,500. Can you explain why? So from you guys preparing the budget in this way, why you've decided, why we've, I don't want to say you, but you know, the peoples have decided to keep it at the 1,700, but then add the 750. Is it because you're worried about future revenues? That's really what it is? But yet we're doing it, we're not going to worry about future revenues for our certified employees. It's like we're choosing. Does this
Right,
make sense?
right. And there's
I just want to know the reasoning.
No, that's a great question. For our certified employees, for the majority of them, we receive funding through our QBE allotment from the state. So most of our certified employees are state funded. All of our classified employees are funded locally through the tax digest
Right,
and other
okay,
revenues.
right.
That's the biggest difference. I think the reason for proposing potentially the 750 one time was exactly what you said. Essentially, it was to so we didn't the sustainability moving forward as we. You know, a couple of different things, you know, as we move forward. Some of the tax legislation is still a little, I hate to use the word murky, but it's not clear yet, and it'll clear up in the next several months. You know, the voucher system as well. I think Dr. Hooker mentioned that last month, you know, our last meeting, you know, the potential of how will that affect our QBE earnings going forward. So I think some of those items, but that was the main, you know, I thought that would keep us from having to add that 750 to the salary table moving forward. And then we could determine again next year if we wanted to do that. It was just a year-to-year decision. So that was our thought process behind.
So most of the funding, I'm not a numbers person. I'm just going to lay that out there. All right. So most of the funding, the 2,500 going to certified employees comes out of the state's budget.
Yes, yeah, we get, well, it comes out of our funding for our FTE, so we do receive funding based on the state salary scale for those certified employees. Currently, we're about 60 positions that we fund that are not funded by the state because of our reduced class size that we try to maintain. So we do have some certified teaching positions that we do fund locally, roughly about 60. So.
Okay.
So it's just a different, you know, again, it's the most all classified transportation maintenance expenses. Of course, we receive very little state funding for those. It's majority of that comes from local resources like our property tax digest.
One more tiny question. Over the years, have we seen, so, I mean, we're looking into the future. We're playing the future game here. Over the trend, I guess, over the last, let's just say 7 years, have you seen a dip in those tax revenues, or typically do they go up every year?
They've been fairly consistent, and we can definitely, when we get to the millage rate hearing, we'll have the 5-year digest. Typically for Clark County, it's 8-9% over the last 5 years, except for last year, which was about 17%. It was kind of the anomaly. I really feel like they're going to stay. I think they would stay consistent. The only concern is that the governor proposed tax legislation, which passed, well, actually the governor didn't propose it, it was passed at the legislative level, and then he approved potentially a 3% cap on the digest for certain properties. So I think that's our concern. If we're at almost 10% this year and that gets capped at 3%, that's a lot of lost property tax revenue. There are ways to opt out of that. All that's not real clear. We're still trying to figure out what the impact of the school district would be, going forward. I think that's kind of our biggest concern is just the unknown going forward with what the tax digest, just because of if it wasn't for the legislation, I would feel comfortable saying it's going to be about an 8-9% increase every year.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Are we good? Okay. So I'll just end by saying that I support all of the items for consideration, including keeping the 2,500 as a permanent salary increase for our classified staff, and I think you all know that that's what we were going to say as a board. I think it shows that we have a vested interest in permanently keeping them at that higher salary rather than playing around with their wallets every year. It just kind of seems a little dirty to do that. I also do support the increase of one paraprofessional per school, seeing that the schools or the leadership in the schools seem to be okay with that one paraprofessional. And I think it's important when you're doing this sort of back and forth to listen to leaders in the buildings while we are also deliberating as a governance team. And I also think that, and I'll end here, just like I did last week, I also do think that it's important to state that for particularly my district, there are 155 students that are in the ASP program, and all of those families are absolutely going to see their weekly cost for ASP almost double. And so at every meeting, I'm going to continue to say that we're increasing salaries on one end and then saying, however, we need you to give more money back to the school district on the other end, and philosophically, that makes no sense. So I want to continue to stress that. But I do support all of the initiatives that are listed here. For the media library, would it be possible for tomorrow's presentation to at least show us what that looks like if we're giving $1,000, let's say, to each of the libraries for whatever improvements that they think that they might need? I think Dr. Gant said in her email $2,000. I think a good compromise might be to consider $1,000, and that does keep us above 20% of our general of our reserves. It looks like it'll still keep us above 20%. And 20% is what you all said that you were comfortable with, right?
Yes, I think that's, the old standard used to be the 15%. I think I heard another CFO from a district mention this, so I'm going to steal what they said because I was like, that's a good thought process. Again, when I started back in 2011, I think we were paying as a school district probably like $125 a month for classified health insurance. I think now, as we saw earlier, it's going to go to $1,580. So I think a lot of costs that the state used to absorb have been passed down to the school district over the years, especially with our classified employees. So I think 20% is a good rule of thumb. That's Dr. Hooker asked me the other day, like, what's 3 months worth of payroll, which I think is also a fair estimation, and we're roughly 46 million is 3 months worth of payroll. So we're slightly above that. I think that's also a good benchmark to kind of use going forward as well. So
Okay.
I think that's.
So then I guess my concluding remarks would be all of those items for consideration have been items that the board has strongly fought for and encouraged the district. And I think that a really healthy space for you as the overseer of our funds, keeping us at that 20%, but still considering the things that the board fully has supported throughout this entire budget development, I think is a great compromise. So yeah, 2,500 and 250 for teachers, and perhaps a little bit of money for our libraries.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
And Dr. Anderson, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Griner, but when we talk about ASP, it's not part of the general budget.
I know it's not, but I'm still going to continue to bring it
Okay.
up at our meetings because this is where we have the public space to complain about things.
Okay.
So.
Your complaint has been heard.
Okay.
All right.
Right, and I
Thank
did,
you.
I prepared a projection, and we'll have that in the board update for this week, that kind of looks at some different, I think you had asked Dr. Anderson, it kind of takes it $6, I did $7, $8, just to kind of show y'all as a board where we're at from a break-even standpoint. Again, we're still in that new norm because we had COVID for so many years. We're still trying to figure out what is that new norm on our salaries, so just keep that in mind when you review it. It's kind of a moving target. I always like to have at least 2 or 3 years of really good data before. So I think, but I will make sure, that's shared in this week's board update, and then we can, that's still a decision that we can definitely take a look at as well.
All right, thank you. Okay, I think it seems as though the board has kind of spoken their piece, correct? We good? All right, fantastic. We will then move on to item 5, the millage rate hearing. Mr. Griner?
Okay. Let's see. So this is our third and final required millage rate hearing. We are in compliance with all the standards set by the Department of Revenue. So this would be our third hearing. Then tomorrow night, the plan would be to adopt the millage rate for FY25. So the millage rate for FY25 was tentatively set at 18.8 mils, same as FY24 back on May 9th. Since then, we have done the required advertising, as well as this is our third hearing, as I mentioned. Reassessment of properties produced an increase of about 7.36%. Keeping in mind our overall increase was 9.63. So you may ask, what's the additional 2.27%? That's actually new growth in Clark County. So the reassessment is where the tax assessor goes in and looks at the value from one year compared to the next, and the other is just any new growth and as y'all could all attest to, we continue to have new growth in Clark County every day, it seems like, when you ride around town. So that's where that's coming from. Again, in order to have no increase, we would have to roll the millage rate all the way back to 17.511, or a difference of 1.289 mils. Again, I mentioned that last time. If we rolled all the way back that far, it would be a little over $9 million decrease in revenue. Some property owners may see an increase, some will not. It just depends on, again, where the tax assessor reassessed that value at compared to last year. Some may completely be the same value as last year. Those notices were sent out in May by the tax assessor's office. Again, these were our assumptions used in the preparation of the budget. We went through those a while ago, so I won't go back through those. Again, this is the same slide as well, which shows our 1 mil is worth $7.4 million for the school district. The millage rate, 18.8. And again, this is just our timeline that we followed. I'll be happy to answer any questions y'all may have on the millage rate.
Thank you, Mr. Greiner. Are there any questions? All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
I think this opens up the space for public comment, and we do have three. Do you mind? We do have three folks signed up for public comment tonight. Do I read the script now? Okay. And so according to policy BCBI, each individual speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. At this point, remarks must be concluded. No speaker will indulge in personal attacks, and all comments are to be addressed directly to the Board of Education. To protect the privacy of students, speakers shall refrain from identifying specific students by name. No individual or group shall be retaliated against in any manner for speaking during public participation. Personal concerns may be addressed in writing to the superintendent and the president of the Board of Education. Written copies of comments may be provided to the board. At a board meeting, board members will not respond to questions or comments from the public. The district may respond to public input as needed or appropriately within 10 working days. And lastly, the use of obscene, profane, vulgar, physically threatening, or abusive remarks will not be allowed. Loud and boisterous conduct or comments by speakers or members of the audience are also not allowed. All right, now we will open up the space for public comment. Reminder that you have 3 minutes each. First person is Mr. Broderick Flanagan.
Hello, good evening, board members. Here to speak in support of the millage rate and as well as the $2,500 increase for classified staff. It sounds like you all are on board with doing that, and so I think that is great. For those of you who may be on the fence about the vote tomorrow, just want to reiterate, how this relates to other issues in our community, like affordable housing or, youth development activities and things of that nature, because some of these employees have youth in our systems, and if they have an increased salary and monies, like Dr. Anderson was speaking to, they can afford to pay for after-school programs or other youth-related activities. And so, as well as like things like childcare and daycare, if my personal millage rate were to increase due to you having to sustain it in the future, I personally would be okay with that. I was able to be fortunate enough to buy a home 2 years ago. And so I feel like if my property taxes that are going to school board side are going towards paying someone's salary and they have a better quality of life because we are able to increase that, then I am okay with that. And so I would hope that other Athenians who are property owners would feel the same way, who are able to be in a position to be able to live comfortably or to be able to afford that. And so I just want to share that message and reiterate that. Also, just some of the work that I've done in the community related to that. as a neighborhood leader and as my role as the executive director with Economic Justice Coalition, it is imperative that we, as a community, start to treat employees in some of these lower wage positions with dignity. And I think this is a good step in the right direction towards doing that and having a culture shift in doing that across the board. Because again, when you look at our poverty rate and other social issues like housing and childcare and those things and food insecurity, it's important that we make these considerations that when you have an opportunity to increase someone's pay and quality of life, to set that example, and hopefully it'll have a ripple effect across the board within our community. And so, yeah, I support all of that, especially to the teacher stipend. I think that's important from talking to and working with several teachers in the community. They talk about all the time the out-of-pocket expenses that they incur. And then I also too support the $2,000 increase or $2,000 one-time supplement for librarians. I manage a literacy program at Burks Elementary, and Burks is one of the better elementary schools here in Athens. They have like decent funds, but I don't think the LSGT funds need to go towards buying equipment and improvements for librarians. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have Mr. Jesse Evans.
Hey everybody, it's good to see you. I recognize all of you. It's been a while since I've seen you face to face. It's really cool. I wanted to say first and foremost, thank you for your hard work on and all you do, not just with this budget and with the millage rate decisions, but just in general. I know it's a lot, and we really appreciate what you do for us in Clark County School District. I want to thank Dr. Hooker for his proposal, and that reflects the values of many people in this district, and also the board members here. I'm president of our local Clark County Association of Educators, which is the local chapter of the Georgia Association of Educators, which is part of the National Education Association, which is the largest labor union in our country. And everything that you all have been saying, these board members have been saying today has been in line with our values. I wanted to speak, so I want to say that I support the millage rate that is proposed because it's going to allow us to do things that you're talking about doing. And I really want to thank you all for the support for the $2,500 into the permanent salary schedule for classified staff and certified staff. But definitely this decision that's been going on, this sort of conversation's been happening for weeks now. I appreciate where you've arrived. And I think that it's important to continue moving towards a living wage for all CCSD employees. That's actually in one of GAE's legislative priorities. And if you go to the MIT living wage calculator, and you can select like the state and the county, for one person that has no children, they're saying a living wage in Clark County would be $41,536. And we have classified staff that would work an entire career and not reach that with the way things have been. So I appreciate moving forward, and I encourage you to continue pushing towards a living wage for everybody in CCSD. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we have, sorry, my glasses. Rita Raines. Miss Rita Raines.
Hey, you guys, thank you for being here and for having open comment. As you heard, my name's Rita Raines. I've been a full-time employee of the school district since the 2008-2009 school year. I've worked at 2 elementary schools, and currently I work at Cedar Shoals High School. This will be my 17th year as a full-time employee of the district. To provide evidence of the needs of the staff, I'd like to read off some of my W-2s from the district from various years. Wages, tips, and other compensation, Box 1. In 2012, $10,704.86. 2017, $14,750.53. 2019, $15,612.78. 2020, $16,401.24. Now, before I say 2023s, let me backtrack on what Mr. Griner said with the governor giving us money. And also, I work in a classroom that has a stipend, which in the short term kind of means that we work with students that will hurt themselves and you. For 2023, I made $30,371.78 after my 16th year with the district. I implore you to please give us the top raise that you feel like you can give us. Recently, I was nominated for the Howard B. Stroud Community Service Award. This award is for an employee who puts the well-being of the district and the district students above themselves. In other words, an employee that's work quality is above their pay grade. Every parapro in this district, every staff member in this district, every teacher in this district, I've never worked with someone that wasn't giving their all. Everyone in this district deserves the largest raise that we can fiscally give them because rent is $1,700. Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes our public comment for the evening, and we can now move to item 6, adjournment.
So moved. Second.
All right, motion made by Ms. Davis and seconded by Mr. Denson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.